Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Marcel Fournier, and I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 24 years old. A lifetime ago, when the world was on fire and my home, my France, was a prisoner. Before the war, my world was simple and it was deep. It smelled of coal dust, sweat, and the damp, metallic tang of the earth's breath. I was a miner, you see, a gueule noire, a black face, like my father and his father before him. We lived our lives by the lamp on our helmets and the structural integrity of a wooden beam. I believed any problem, any rockfall, any challenge could be understood by listening. You press your ear to the coal face and you learn its secrets. You feel the tension in the rock, you hear the groans of timbers taking weight. The earth was a difficult, dangerous partner, but it was an honest one. It always warned you before it tried to kill you. The war taught me that men are not so honest. They told me my years in the mines made me perfect for the job. They saw a man comfortable in confined spaces, a man who knew the dark as an old friend. They didn't understand. No miner is comfortable. He is merely accustomed. He understands the bargain he has made with the crushing weight above him. And they didn't understand that for a man who has spent his life listening to the earth, the worst sound in the world isn't an explosion. It's the deep, terrible silence that comes right after. A silence that means the earth has stopped talking and is about to act. That was the silence they asked me to enter in the heart of Paris in August of 1944. I can still feel the rough stone of the archway on my fingertips as I descended. The air changed instantly. Above, Paris was a symphony of chaos, the sporadic crack of rifle fire, the joyful, terrified shouts of Parisians, the growl of our Shermans. But as we went down the winding stone steps, all of that faded, replaced by a cold, ancient stillness. The air grew thick, heavy with the smell of damp limestone, of centuries of decay, and something else, something uniquely still. The smell of bone. My pack felt impossibly heavy. The radio, my precious SCR 300, dug into my shoulders, its metal antenna scraping the low ceiling. My guide, a wiry Maquis fighter named Luke, who moved through this underworld like a rat, didn't seem to notice the oppressive quiet. I felt it in my lungs, in my bones. It was the pressure. The same pressure I knew from the mine, but wrong. This wasn't the weight of a negotiable earth. This was the weight of a tomb. Luke pointed with his chin down a long, narrow corridor. There, it's a nexus of several old tunnels, stable, hewn from the best rock. You'll be safe enough. The entrance is over a kilometer from the German headquarters at the Hôtel Meurice. They won't know you're here until our tanks are rolling up the Rue de Rivoli. Safe enough. A miner laughs at a phrase like that. Nothing is safe when you have a city on your head. The walls weren't just rock, they were people. Neatly stacked femurs formed solid ramparts, and peering from alcoves were rows upon rows of skulls. Their empty sockets watched me pass. Millions of them, the dead of Paris, arranged and catalogued. In the mine, the darkness was empty, a void waiting to be filled with the sound of work, of life. Here, the darkness was full. It was crowded with silent observers. I tried not to look at them, focusing on the small circle of light from my torch. I found the spot Luke had indicated, a small recess where a larger tunnel intersected with a smaller one. I ran my hand along the ceiling, a habit from the mines. It felt solid, limestone, not shale or slate that would splinter and shear. Good, a small comfort. I unslung the radio. My hands, usually so steady when repairing a faulty cable or setting a timber, trembled slightly. I attached the long whip antenna, propping it in a crevice. I unspooled the ground wire, found a damp patch of earth to stake it. Meticulous. The way my father taught me, you don't rush when the earth is watching. I put on the headset, the cold bakelite pressing against my ear. A flip of a switch and the comforting hiss of static filled my head, a fragile shield against the suffocating silence. It was a man-made sound, a living sound. I tuned the frequency, the whine rising and falling, then a crackle, a voice. Vanguard, this is Firefly, do you read me? Over. My callsign was Vanguard. It felt like a cruel joke. I was no Vanguard, I was a worm buried deep in the soil while the real soldiers fought in the sun. My throat was dry, tasting of dust. I keyed the handset. Firefly, this is Vanguard, I read you. Lima Charlie, loud and clear. Over, my voice sounded small, swallowed by the immense stone chamber. Excellent, Vanguard, came the reply from Captain Dubois. Stay on this channel. The eyes are moving into position. Report everything you hear. And so my war began. My job was simple. I was a telephone operator in hell. Resistance spotters hiding in attics and bell towers across the city would relay German positions to a central command, who would then pass them to me. I was the insulated, secure relay. My position, deep underground, made my signal almost impossible for the Germans to triangulate. I would then feed the intelligence directly to the tank commanders of my division, Leclerc's boys, who were fighting their way block by block through the city. I was the nerve ending connecting the eyes to the fist. The first reports came in. A machine gun nest in a second-story window on the Boulevard Saint-Germain. I copied the coordinates, my pencil scratching on the notepad. I repeated them back, my voice a monotone of professionalism. I relayed them to the tank platoon. A few minutes later, the dull, distant whump of a 75 Michel vibrated through the soles of my boots. A faint shower of dust drifted down from the ceiling. I squeezed my eyes shut. I imagined the ceiling giving way, the tons of rock and earth and history crashing down, the final, splintering crack of my own bones, the miner's death. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach. I focused on the hiss in my ears. Breathe, Marcel, just breathe. Another report. A PaK-40 anti-tank gun hidden behind a barricade of cobblestones and overturned trams near the Place de la Concorde. A real threat to our Shermans, I scribbled furiously. I could hear the urgency in the captain's voice. I relayed the position. Received, Vanguard, a gruff voice from a tank commander crackled back. We see the barricade. Moving to flank, then the world shook. It wasn't a distant rumble this time. It was a roar, a physical blow that traveled through the stone and slammed into my body. The ground bucked. My torch fell and extinguished, plunging me into absolute, total blackness. A river of dust and pebbles rained down on my head and shoulders. A large piece of rock broke free somewhere in the tunnel and crashed to the floor with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. The skulls on the wall seemed to chatter. The pressure in my ears was immense. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This is it. This is the collapse. My lungs seized. I couldn't draw a breath. The mine was claiming me. The darkness was no longer an absence of light. It was a physical presence, a heavy blanket smothering me, filling my mouth, my nose, my mind. My thoughts were stripped gears, grinding uselessly. Run, flee, get out, get to the surface. But there was nowhere to run. Then through the ringing in my ears, I heard it. A faint, desperate crackle from the headset still clamped to my head. Guard Vanguard, do you copy? Position of the 88 Vanguard, respond. The column is stalled, the 88, the tank killer. My comrades were pinned down. They were dying up there in the light while I was cowering in the dark, suffocating on my own fear. Something inside me broke, or maybe something was forged. My loyalty, my fierce, burning love for those men, for my country, went to war with the terror. And for a moment, it was a battle my loyalty was losing. I remembered my father, his face covered in soot, coming home from a shift after a small rockfall had trapped 2 men. He wasn't panicked, he was grim, focused. You don't think about the tons above, he told me once. You think about the one timber in front of you. You make sure it holds. You do your job. My job, the headset, the voice. I fumbled for the handset, my fingers clumsy and numb. My thumb found the transmit button. I pressed it. My voice was a ragged, choked thing, a stranger's voice. Firefly, this is Vanguard. I copy. The ground is unstable. Repeat last transmission. Another concussion wave hit, less severe this time. But the voice came back, strained but clear. An observer in the Louvre had spotted it. An 88 gun dug into the Tuileries garden, commanding the approach to the Rue de Rivoli. It had already knocked out one of our tanks. I grabbed my pencil in the suffocating dark, my notepad on my knee. I wrote by feel, pressing the lead so hard it almost tore the paper as the captain relayed the coordinates. I read them back, my voice shaking but steady. I switched frequencies. All tank commanders, this is Vanguard priority message. German 88, I repeat, Flak 88 in the Tuileries, coordinates follow. I sent the message. And then I waited in the dark, listening to the silence of the dead and the frantic beat of my own heart. The world above had gone quiet too. It was that terrible, waiting silence, the silence before the verdict. I was sure another shell would hit, that this time the ancient ceiling would surrender. I braced myself, my hands gripping the cold metal of the radio, the only solid thing in my dissolving world. Instead of a collapse, a new sound began. A low rumble that grew and grew, vibrating not just through the floor but through the very air. It was the sound of dozens of tank engines. And then, the cacophony of battle renewed, but different this time. The deep-throated boom of our Shermans, the frantic, ripping sound of their machine guns, and underneath it all, a new sound, the sound of people, a roar of voices singing. They were singing La Marseillaise. My headset crackled to life one last time. It was Captain Dubois. His voice was full of a breathless, weeping joy. They got it, Marcel. They got the 88. The road is open. We're through. The city is ours. I leaned my head back against the wall of bones and let the tears I didn't know I was holding finally fall. tracing clean paths through the grime and dust on my face. I sat there in the dark for a long time, just listening to the sound of my city being born again. I spent the rest of my life working with my hands, but I never went underground again. Not into a cave, not into a cellar, and certainly not a mine. The war changed the way the earth spoke to me. Before, it spoke of work, of sustenance, of honest danger, but after that day in the catacombs, it only whispered of tombs. It reminded me that the line between a foundation and a grave is terribly thin. I learned that my skill, the one thing I thought I truly understood, was tied to the one thing that could unmake me. The war didn't fix that. It just burned the connection in deeper. The hardest lesson is this: bravery isn't the absence of fear. I was never more afraid in my entire life than I was in that black, shaking darkness beneath Paris. Bravery is just duty that is a single, desperate degree stronger than your terror. You don't defeat your demons in a war. You just learn to make them carry ammunition for you. The fear never leaves. You just find a reason, a brother, a flag, a voice in a headset to be more afraid of failure than you are of the darkness. This memory is a piece of shrapnel I carry. It's heavy. Help me carry it. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never left to rust in silence.